All right, let's start the morning today with some Vonnegut from Timequake, which is his final novel. Uh, I just finished a project where I read through all of his novels, not the short stories, but all of the novels, starting with Play a Piano through to Timequake. Um, I'd read Sirens of Titan, Slaughterhouse-5, Cat's Cradle, like the earlier 4 or 5 I'd read in high school and college. Um, but I'd never read all of them. Um, and it was really an extraordinary experience. There's an evolution of his voice, um, right? But what I mean by that is an insertion of his voice as a character. Um, early on, he is maybe not even a cameo, right? He's a sliver of a presence in some scenes in the book, but by the time you get to like Dead Eye Dick or Breakfast of Champions, Vonnegut, the author, is a character in the novels, um, and then while they retain their novelistic structure, they become, I'm going to say, bizarrely autobiographical, but kind of autobiographical, but filtered, right? Like it starts with a futuristic premise, um, and then is working out his autobiography through the filter of that premise. Anyway, that's a different video. In Timequake, he writes about writing several times. And here I'm on page 117 of this edition, which is the beginning of chapter 35. And he says, tellers of stories with ink on paper, not that they matter anymore, have been either swoopers or bashers. When did he write this? It was... When was this published? 1997. So the internet was starting, right? But prescient, not that they matter anymore, have been either swoopers or bashers. Swoopers write a story quickly, higgledy-piggledy, crinkum-crankum, any which way. Then they go over it again painstakingly, fixing everything that is just plain awful or doesn't work. Bashers go one sentence at a time, getting it exactly right before they go on to the next one. When they're done, they're done. So I think that's a pretty good split that makes some sense. I am definitely a swooper. Absolutely a swooper. Uh, I can't tolerate a blank page, so I fill it with garbage. And I know it's garbage. Often it's literally copying and pasting just so I have a page of stuff that then I can go back in and change, discard. Um, I've talked a lot about this book. Excuse me while I reach. George Saunders, who I suspect in this categorization is a swooper. In this book, George analyzes short stories, but while analyzing them, he also helps talk about the creative act of writing. And what I got from this book was that you don't need to know how the story is going to end. What you need to be able to do is look at what you have in front of you and interrogate it to see what it needs. And that's your task for the day. Maybe that one sentence needs an extra word, or maybe the character in that sentence needs to do something slightly different. He talks about an example of a paragraph where he was reading it and one day realized the character needed to be looking this way. And right, And then I might end up with 4 or 5 different ideas on a page, but only 2 of them belong together, and the other 3 can be discarded or moved somewhere else, or the order shifted. And at a certain point, there are no more questions to ask, or I can't think of any more questions, and that's the extent of my craft. As my craft gets better, I'm able to ask more precise questions. I'm able to be more honest in asking the material. I'm trying to finish a piano concerto right now. I use the word concerto loosely. It's for piano and wind symphony, right? And I've been debating the orchestration. I want a larger resource. I want like 2 per part, which is a large. I've not written for those kind of massed resources. It would have been more comfortable to write for like a wind octet and a piano rather than like an orchestral winds and piano. And I've been working on it all year, on and off. But I'm at the point now where the 7 sections, the 7 movements are 80% done, maybe 90% done. And what I can do now is look at them and ask the question, is this doing what I think it does? And I think that's what a swooper does. But as a swooper, I need to see something. I can't just look and think, okay, this is first measure. It's just not how I... Anyway, Vonnegut goes on and says, I am a basher. And then he says, most men are bashers and most women are swoopers. Again, somebody should look into this. It may be that writers of either sex are born to be swoopers or bashers. I don't know about that. I'm not particular. Anyway, why does he say that? He says, I visited Rockefeller University recently, and they are seeking and finding more and more genes that tend to make us behave this way or that way, just as a rerun after a Timequake would do. That's the premise of this book, that in 2007, which was 10 years after he wrote the book, some event happens and everything shifts back to exactly where it was 10 years before, and you relive the previous 10 years, knowing that knowing what's happening, knowing that it's a really interesting, it's a cool premise, and it allows for a lot of memorialization. Even before that visit, it appeared to me that Jane's and my children and Allie's and Jim's children, while not alike as grown-ups, had each become the sort of grown-ups they practically had to be, and all 6 are okay. It's serendipitous as well. Just before I was recording this, I was listening to Sam Harris talking about free will on the Waking Up app. And I've read his book on free will. And I think about it a lot because I think that what he's saying there, I find it very difficult to understand. But I intuit that it's very important, because as I struggle with it, I feel like it's like a superhighway to an understanding of the nature of self. Asking the questions, where did that decision come from? Where did the impulse come from? Not what did I choose to do with it, not what were the impacts of it, but where did it come from? And so perhaps Vonnegut is talking of something like that. And perhaps it ties into whether you're a basher or a swooper. Like, I don't know where ideas come from. I don't know if they're any good. I don't know what that means. What I do know is that the act of putting them down on paper or on video like this, whether it's video or my Substack or the compositions that I'm working on, I don't know where they come from, but I do know that responding to them feels good. So, take that as you will. what I hope is that these short ideas and texts and poems, as much as they ignite my desire to create, first, maybe the same text will inspire you all to be ignited. But more than that, that you'll recognize the sparks in your life. Because we all have these entities, people, and artifacts, books, music, people that have inspired us. And it's really worth recognizing that. And I'm feeling more and more like this channel is an exercise in recognizing, identifying and recognizing whatever it is that inspires all of us as we move ahead with our individual creative endeavors, whatever those may be, whether you're a composer or a writer or a YouTuber or a data analyst. We're all doing something. We're all humans. So, more to come. Keep your wits about you, and please like, subscribe, drop a comment, all that stuff.